Sometimes the decisions we face can be very uncomfortable, especially those that impact a person's life or livelihood. Situations like that can bring up personal feelings that can cloud our judgment, and our desire to not experience emotional or interpersonal discomfort can drive us to either make unwise decisions or to freeze and avoid making the necessary decisions. In today's video, we'll look at how we can best navigate through these types of situations. But first, my cool animated logo. While some people will advocate that CEOs should not include their personal feelings in decisions, in my experience, the exact opposite is true. Being proactively aware of the feelings brought up by whatever situation we're in carries great importance. Well, why? It's important data for us to be aware of. These feelings may have to do with being appropriately aware and sensitive to the potential consequences of our actions, and they can guide us toward things we should probably take into account when handling certain situations. Also, if we don't notice, or worse, if we avoid those feelings that are present in us, remember it's data, then we're operating in partial blindness, and that compromises our capacity to lead. It's like what happens when you place your palm over one eye. You lose a dimension of perception that can cause you to misjudge depth, like missing a step and falling down the stairs. Well, feelings are a dimension of perception. As conscious leaders aware of our feelings, we can sense what these feelings are telling us. This can often shed light on aspects of our situations that we otherwise may not notice, like blind spots. And as leaders, we have a far better chance of succeeding when we do our utmost to illuminate our blind spots. With our feelings taken into account, we'll have a much more complete picture from which we can fully assess our situations from a place of clarity, so we can then choose the wisest path forward. And one more thing is that when we tap into our feelings, our caring hearts open, and that paves the way, to the best of our abilities, to incorporate compassion into our decisions. So let me tell you the story of William the CEO and Mary the VP of Human Resources. Mary was 62 years old. She'd been with this tech company for 22 years. And when she started, there were only 30 people on staff. She was brought in as the first HR director, and over time, the company grew to 1,400 employees. But over the years, Mary did not keep pace with the professional growth required to manage a company of this size. A big issue was that she did not adapt well to the company's growing millennial workforce, and it became clear over time that the job was moving beyond her willingness and or capacity to change. Employee agitation rose up against her old-school approach, and it even led to performance suffering. Enter William the CEO. So William had been CEO for the last 10 years, and he'd grown increasingly frustrated with Mary's performance. He'd been wanting to let her go for a while, but just couldn't get himself to do it. Each time her leadership caused a new breakdown, William would start heading down the terminate Mary path, but only to put it off once he cooled down. But why? What was in the way of him taking the clear action he needed to take? William knew how much meaning Mary's job had for her, and she was proud of being the company's longest-serving employee. He knew she was a widow with no children, and that for her, the company was like family, and she was only 3 or 4 years away from retirement. Over the decade they worked together, he and Mary shared a lot of conversations about their lives, and he confided in her about his own family life. So there was a personal connection. He just could not pull the switch. But knowing he was stuck and feeling the pressure of failing the company, William sought coaching. In the first session, he shared that he knew she had to leave, he just didn't have the heart to do that to her. And this was the crux of the issue, that he was thinking he would be doing something to her. Yes, caring about our employees and taking into account how our decisions impact them is essential in conscious leadership. But where William went off the track was in making the situation about himself. But what do I mean by that? Firing Mary has to do with Mary, yes, but his difficulty and his guilt is about him. That's where he was getting stuck, in what he was doing to her, meaning that he was making it mean something about him as a person. That is neither a healthy place to lead from, nor is it a wise or highly functional place from which to make sound business decisions. Now, every CEO is going to face tough choices. It's written like in bold letters in the job description. There are always going to be people we like and care about, and people who have worked hard for the company who are just no longer the right fit. Well, what do we do when we've objectively assessed that there's no longer alignment between a team member's skill and ability and their job functions? How do we handle this when they're a great person and a dedicated employee? As conscious leaders, it is important for our hearts to be engaged when considering decisions, but in a non-reactive way, so that we can choose our course of action wisely. Here's how William and I approached finding a resolution that felt right for him. As we walk through this, see how any of this can be applied to your own challenging situations. We started by laying out the issue, the obvious issue. Mary, the VP of HR, was not only blocking the company's forward movement, but was dragging down the employee base. Next was to determine the end goal for the company, which was obviously to bring in a talented VP of HR to replace Mary. Now, in order for William to get to clarity about this and be able to deal with it and take action, we needed to consider how his thoughts and his emotions were blocking him from effectively managing the situation. So this means we needed to do a little digging. This doesn't take long. It's not hard to get to what's actually blocking us. We just have to take a look. 3 of William's primary insights into what was really going on with him were: first, growing up, his business-owning father used to gloat about how he took advantage of those poor suckers, his employees, and William always felt pained by that, and he vowed he would never be like that. You know how we vow we'll never be like our parents. But he was serious about this one. He did not want to be like his father in that. It's not hard to see how that's involved here. Next, William saw how his need to be seen as a good guy was overpowering his ability to see the larger picture. And that bigger picture is that while he was avoiding addressing Mary's exit, hundreds of other employees were suffering from her policies and her attitudes. Some of them were leaving for better environments. So where's the good guy in that? The first 2 insights led to greater clarity. He saw it had been Mary's responsibility to grow with the company, rather than allow the times to pass her by while she coasted to retirement. He saw that her situation was, in part, a consequence of choices she made and her actions. He got clear that this was a performance issue, and that he was not doing this or anything to her. And this was a big moment for him to really get that. These insights allowed William to see through his unwinnable game of needing to be the good guy, so that he could return to having a clear perspective on the situation. William wanted to bring compassion to the situation, but he struggled with what that would look like when terminating a longtime employee. So we discussed that bringing compassion to these types of situations requires taking the whole picture into account and recognizing that perfect solutions are rare. In this case, what needed to be taken into consideration at the very least were Mary and her well-being, and the team members and their well-being. So William resolved to offer her 2 options, both of which would allow her to announce her resignation with grace. Immediate termination with some type of parachute, or a 3 or 6 month transition out, serving as a consultant with some type of parachute. Compassionate consideration led William to meet Mary off-site to give her space to react without having to face anyone else in the office. With the internal processing William had done, he found himself able to be direct but caring in breaking the news and laying out the options. It allowed him to feel natural and calm and relaxed when he was sharing it with her, to just be caring. But now we get to the ironic plot twist. Though Mary was shaken and tears were flowing, she actually smiled at William and told him how relieved she was. She surprised William, telling him that for the last few years, she felt like she was in way over her head, but didn't want to let him or the company down, so she just kept plugging away. And he was even more shocked when she said, "William, you're such a good guy for handling it this way. I'll never forget this moment." Of course, this touched him deeply, because of just how directly it tapped into his wish to be a good guy, a good leader. Now let's talk about the importance of infusing compassion into leadership like this. There's a purity in true compassion that has to do with selflessly acting to relieve suffering, and bringing compassion to our teams is certainly a tenet of conscious leadership. As conscious leaders with compassion, we'll naturally care about our teams. If they're very stressed, we'll creatively find ways to better support them. This is so important in and of itself. But it's also wise because most often the benefit of treating teams with respect and compassion is greater productivity, improved morale, dedication, loyalty. But remember, this is not about pretending to act as though we're compassionate in order to get those results. That would be a form of manipulation designed to get our company needs met at the unreasonable cost of others. That type of false compassion will ultimately be seen through by team members, and it's destined to fail. Our teams will know, and it'll just make things worse. So acting with compassion has to be heartfelt and authentic. And the good news is that being authentic and compassionate is your natural state. It may not be your normal state every day, but it's an easy pivot to natural, authentic, caring ways of being. And better yet, it's profitable for all. There's a lot more content on the evolvingceo.com website, as well as info on how we can connect. I'll leave the link down below so you can check it out. May you lead with an open heart.